Bera! I'm here to read you chapter 9 of Kid Normal, and I thought I'd choose this little spot in my house today because this picture above me has a word you might not have seen before, and it's pronounced hygge, and it comes from Denmark, and it's a Danish word, and it basically means being cozy, being snug, and feeling safe. So I like to come here in this little corner of the sofa with a book, usually some chocolate, in the warm, in my comfiest clothes, and I just like to sit and read, and I like to be hygge. So I thought I'd share this spot with you today. So chapter 9 is called The Alliance. It's always a strange experience walking into a lesson late. It's even stranger when you've just been to see the head teacher and he's threatened you with physical violence. Murph headed back to the room where he'd left the rest of his class and creaked open the door, which sounded like the loudest noise on earth. Every single head in the room turned towards him as he scuttled in sideways like an unusually shy crab. He noticed several different expressions as he went to his seat: surprise, confusion, annoyance, and really needing the toilet. This last one had nothing to do with him. Murph wasn't to know this, but Sophie Clark's parents insisted she drank 2 litres of water every day. "Welcome, welcome," said the teacher at the front of the class, who was sitting at a large grand piano. As she said each word, she played a chord, which gave Murph the impression he had walked into Weirdo School, the musical. The tinkling teacher was the school's head of music, Mrs. Baum. "Today I'm going to be playing you one of my favourite pieces of music," continued Mrs. Baum. "As I was just saying, Elgar's Nimrod is all about friendship and how your friends can inspire you." This was literally music to Murph's ears. It almost sounded like a normal lesson, and after being allowed to stay at the school by the skin of his teeth, any class where he might be able to make head or tail of what was going on was a bonus. He sank gratefully behind an empty desk. "Now have a listen as I play the piece for you," said Mrs. Baum in soothing tones. She cracked her knuckles and lifted her hands above the keys. Nearby, Murph noticed Mary wince. Mrs. Baum froze for a moment as if gathering her thoughts, then began to play. And immediately Murph realised that, of course, this was nothing like a normal lesson. Here at the school, the teachers had capes just like their students. Mrs. Baum's was the ability to move her hands with lightning speed. She finished Elgar's lovely, inspiring piece of music in just under 2 seconds. It sounded like, well, it's difficult to describe what it sounded like. It sounded like someone was pressing 5,000 notes at once. It sounded like a musical nosebleed. It sounded like a really fat otter had scurried across the piano keys on its way to an otter party. Mrs. Baum opened her eyes and looked expectantly at her class. "What did you think?" she asked them innocently. Murph looked around blankly, then bowed his head until it touched the desk in front of him. He sighed a sigh that actually lasted longer than Mrs. Baum's Elgar concert. The lesson ended 20 minutes later, after Mrs. Baum had played them complete high-speed works of Mozart, Beethoven, Strauss, and oddly several TV theme tunes from the 1980s. Everyone spilled out into the corridor, wondering how they were ever going to learn anything about music, and what on earth was the Krypton factor. Murph heard several mutterings. "What you still doing here, Kid Normal?" asked Timothy as he and his friends jostled past him. The rest of the class seemed to have decided to ignore him, and the corridor quickly emptied. Only Mary stayed behind, along with Hilda, the tiny horse girl, though she didn't seem keen to hang around either. "Hang on," he heard Mary hiss to her as they approached him. "Right, what on earth is going on?" Mary asked Murph, giving him the full raised eyebrow treatment. "Why did you tell me you could fly?" "Actually, I didn't ever tell anyone I could fly," replied Murph matter-of-factly. "I think you asked me if I was a skimmer, and I had no idea what you were talking about." Mary pursed her lips and looked at him with her head on one side. "You are a puzzle, aren't you? So what happened with Mr. Superman? We thought when Deborah Leamington came and dragged you off to his office, you were going to be kicked out." "Deborah Wattington?" Hilda piped up. "Deborah Leamington, she's like the coolest girl in school. Her and Dirk, that's the boy who was with her, are actually operational. Someone was telling me about it in the toilets the other day. They're like so awesome." "All right, Hilda, calm down," said Mary. "We're not that cool. Hilda wants to be a hero, you see," she continued to Murph. "She's desperate to get noticed by the Alliance." "What are you talking about?" blurted Murph, cutting into the stream of gibberish. "Okay, can we start from the beginning, please? Have I quite literally no idea what is going on? I've ended up at this school by accident, so humour me, okay? Start with the basics, and every time you say something I don't understand, I'm going to hoot like a confused owl." Mary looked at him with exasperation, then seemed to relent and smiled. "Fine, we'll start from the beginning. I told you about capes, right?" "Right," confirmed Murph. "Short for capabilities," Hilda added excitedly. "Hoot," said Owl Murph. "If you find out you have a capability, you're invited to come to a school like this one, where they train you to use it. More importantly, to hide it," Mary said. "Woot hoot," asked the owl. "How does the school know you have a superpower?" "Cape," Hilda corrected him. Well, it's a secret, of course, said Mary, but I think they have contacts in the police and hospitals and stuff. They always seem to find out when someone's cape starts appearing. Picture to share with you there of Mary, Murph and Hilda. The doctor must have told them about mine, Hilda said, because my parents sent me to talk to her when I told them I could make tiny horses appear. It wasn't a normal kind of doctor's office, though. There was carpet on the wall and very few windows. Anyway, I think she must have passed it on somehow. Mr. Superman came to see my parents the next day. Yeah, I think the fire brigade said something about me. My parents had to call them to get me down off the roof, said Mary. That was 2 years ago. Mr. Superman said it was very early for a cape to start working. It's normally when you're about 10. So, continued Hilda, you come to the school to learn to control your cape and practice it, develop it, so you can work out if it's good enough for you to become fully operational one day. Hoot! Mary rolled her eyes. Hilda, who still had some patience remaining and actually seemed to be rather enjoying Murph's turn as a confused owl, carried on. Operational, you know, as in actually using your cape to fight crime, catch the baddies. They don't tell us much about it, but I bet you get a costume, a cool car, catchphrases and everything. Look in here, said Mary, leading Murph into the main hall, which they were just passing. Murph had been in there for lunch yesterday, but now it was deserted. This is what it's all about. Mary was pointing upwards to a stone plaque he hadn't noticed before, set into the wall above the stage, and it said, "The Hero's Vow. I promise to save without glory, to help without thanks, and to fight without fear. I promise to keep our secrets, uphold our vow, and learn what it means to be a true hero." That's the promise you make if you get to join the Heroes Alliance, said Hilda reverently. I knew it off by heart by the end of the very first day. But hardly any of us get to join the real heroes, Mary interrupted, bursting Hilda's bubble. Mostly the school just teaches you to control your cape so you can hide it. Only a few capes are very good for real crime fighting, you know? She glanced uneasily at Hilda as she said this. Only the really great ones. The rest of us will have to try to keep them under wraps so we can have a normal life after school. Some people's capes are really random, actually. There's a kid in the final year called Barry Talbot who can make his teeth scream. What use is that? It frightens the dentist, I suppose. Still, there's nothing wrong with dreaming, is there? Said Hilda determinedly. Whether you make it or not, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a hero, or designing your costume, or working out what your hero name would be. Not that I've done any of that, she added, quickly blushing. Okay, so most of you are here to learn how to hide your superpowers, asked Murph, dropping his owl act for a moment. Sorry, capes. You're supposed to pretend you don't have a power. Well, for the first time in 48 hours, that sounds like something I could actually do. Murph felt a little more buoyed up after his chat with Mary and Hilda. His mind was still humming with questions, but at least he felt like he knew the basics, even if the basics could be summarised with the following words. Secret bonkers school. No cape. Trapped. Can't tell anyone about it. The next day on the other side of town, Nicholas Knox was striding through the reception area of Ribbon Robotics like he owned the place. His hair was swept back into a greased wave, and at the end of his long legs, his shiny shoes stole everyone else's light and flicked it back at them contemptuously. He had a black leather briefcase tucked under one arm that looked very much as if it might be full of evil plans. Since Nectar had taken over, security had become much tighter. At the back of the reception area was a row of new revolving glass doors. To enter, you had to swipe your pass on a pad beside the doors, which made a slightly annoying bleep. Then you stepped inside and the doors revolved so slowly that you were forced to inch forward on tiptoe, squeezed tight into a glass triangle. The security systems had been personally designed by Nectar himself, whose wasp-infused brain liked nothing more than causing people a bit of needless irritation at the start of their working day. Behind the revolving doors were 3 lifts. The one with a bright yellow door could only be accessed by staff with top-level security clearance. It took you up to the area prowled by Nectar, the glass-walled 4th floor of the factory. Beyond that was the tall tower at the far end of the building, but only Nectar himself had access to that. Knox swiped his security pass beside the yellow lift and stepped inside. Ah, Knox, buzzed Nectar as he watched his henchperson enter the boardroom. I like your briefcase. Then, wondering that this wasn't a particularly evil thing to say, he followed it up with a dastardly chuckle, but all this did was make him sound like he found briefcases really funny. Good morning, Lord Nectar, said Knox smoothly as he sat down and made himself comfortable. Although this was only his first day as Nectar's second-in-command, it didn't appear that way. Knox gave off an air of confidence and a smell of aftershave that made Nectar's antenna twitch. I thought we might discuss our plans, Knox began. Ah yes, number 2, the plans, said Nectar, greedily rubbing his hands together. I have an incredibly evil idea. Go on, Knox coaxed him. What is the thing we hate most in the world, more than anything? Asked Nectar. Anyone that stands in our way, replied Knox. Yeah, I suppose we hate them quite a lot, Nectar conceded. But what do we really, really hate? There was an awkwardly long pause as if they were in a video that kept buffering. Well, snapped Nectar. I'm sorry, your waspishness. I assumed you were about to answer your own questions, said Nox. I was about to answer my own questions, said Nectar. Nobody said anything for another 10 seconds. Picnic, said Nectar finally at the top of his voice. I'm so sorry, I said Nox hesitantly. It sounded like you said picnics. Yes, I did. Picnics. I just love ruining them. So my evil plan is this. Spoil as many picnics as possible. As you might have realised, the wasp DNA that had become fused with Nectar's brain had begun interfering more and more with his thoughts as the months since his accident had gone by. It had started off with a need to sting people and a great love for fizzy drinks. Then later he'd found it more and more difficult to get out of an open doorway without banging into the frame. More recently, as the wasp part of his mind had grown yet more powerful, he'd started developing an all-consuming obsession with picnics, barbecues, and indeed outdoor dining of any kind. The thought of other people enjoying sweet treats in the sunshine filled his whole body with rage. Picnics? Inquired Nox gently. Yes, picnics. This is my first plan. Ruin all picnics. But that, Mr. Nox, is just the beginning. Thank goodness, thought Nox to himself. That was starting to sound a bit stupid for a moment there. Out loud, he asked, and so what is the next phase of the plan? I want to... Nectar gestured with a long spindly finger to make Nox come closer to him. I want to... get into somebody's ice cream, so when they lick, I'll be there, ha-ha! Nox tried to respond by raising a hand, but the loony wasp was clearly on a roll. Not only that, I want to crawl around someone's glass when they're having a drink and creep about under a bin lid and then pop out when they lift it. Hello, I'd say. Sir, piped up Nox, but again to no avail. I want to make a papery house in someone's attic and live there all summer and just buzz around a bit whenever someone pops up to get the suitcases. Nox hoped Nectar was done. Right, he said. Of course, my lord. I mean, all these things are achievable. I am with you 100%. However, may I make a small suggestion? Has it got anything to do with picnics, ice creams, bins, drinks or attics? Replied Nectar. Indirectly, yes. Yes, it does. It involves all of those things, said Nox. Tell me more, you smart briefcased devil. So, said Nox, ignoring Nectar's second odd briefcase-based compliment in as many minutes, we have mind control helmets. We have an entire robotics factory at our disposal. We could attempt to take over the country. Oh, why on earth would we want to do that? Whined Nectar. Don't you see, sir? If we take over the country, we then have control of everything. Nectar looked up slowly, his crispy neck clicking as he did so. Everything? He asked hungrily. Everything, sir, Nox confirmed. Even picnics? Oh, yes, sir, especially picnics. Help me take over the country and you can ruin all picnics forever. And can I get in ice creams? Yes. Bins? Yes. Attics? Oh, flipping yes. Yes, sir. Of course, sir, said Nox, almost losing his composure. But luckily, Nectar was too excited to notice. I will retask the robotics unit to begin construction of more mind control helmets straight away. We have Penny Percival's spy drones all ready to deploy. I can send them out across the area looking for people to enslave. We can pinpoint the most powerful and intelligent and use them to begin constructing our own army. Excellent work, Nox, said Nectar. I think you're right. It's time to lure a few likely candidates into our little honey trap. Honey, that's bees, sighed Nox. Nox, unleash the drones, yelled Nectar dramatically. He found that he'd really enjoyed shouting that so much that he said it again. Unleash the drones! Never one for subtlety, the giant wasp felt like it needed maybe just one more. Unleash the... Nox disagreed. Right away, sir, he said, sweeping out the room. Nectar wandered over to the window to survey the streets and houses in the distance that would soon be under his control. He nodded to himself and felt it appropriate to murmur his new catchphrase again, changing it slightly to make it seem more final. Yes, unleash those drones. That's the end of chapter 9. Chapter 10 is coming on Friday, tomorrow. See you then. Bye.